views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. On today's segment, we are spotlighting the arts, music, fine arts, dance, any form of art. And the reason we're doing that is because of the literally thousands of studies that demonstrate that involvement in the arts promotes health, public health, physical health, mental health. And that is the major focus of this program, as well as fostering and nurturing the ability to make it to college and to succeed in college. And today we are very fortunate to welcome Terre Roche of the Roches and AfroJersey to talk about her music and how that enabled so many people to promote health. Terre, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Terre Roche is 1/3 of three sisters that through the 1970s into the 2000s recorded numerous albums that were critically acclaimed. The Roches were on SNL. They were on The Tonight Show. They recorded an album of Christmas songs, We Three Kings, that was released in 1990. They recorded an album of children's music, Will You Be My Friend, in 1994. Honestly, one of the greatest vocal trios of all time. A reviewer once said, the Roche sisters make such a perfect team because they are individually so distinct from one another and from the rest of the world. More recently, you've been doing some really amazing work on a project called AfroJersey. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Okay, well, AfroJersey started out when I wanted to get some sort of small drum to use with my guitar students because I teach guitar. You know, I noticed that the students don't like the metronome, you know, tick, 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 tick. So I thought, well, if I have a little hand drum, you know, maybe that would be more organic for the student to play along with my hand drum. So I picked up the Remo drums, you know, they're like for children, very colorful. And this one was called a djembe drum, and it had a little tag on it, and it said, the djembe drum is the healing drum from West Africa. So I thought, well, that's interesting. So I bought a book about how to play the djembe drum. And in the book, it said, if you really want to study this, you should study with someone from West Africa. So I found a school at the time on 18th Street in New York. There was a school called the Geneva Dance and Drum School. For my first lesson, I brought my little toy drum, you know, and they said, no, you have to play a real drum. And I was allowed to go into the drum class. But before I went in, they had, when you got off the elevator there, they had a window in which the dance classes were taking place. And I see through the window that this dance class is taking place with this very lively drumming. And I see this one person in the class that's in a wheelchair, and he comes flying out of his wheelchair onto the dance floor, and he's dancing on his hands. So that was, I thought, wow, that is a very intense, interesting person, talented. This guy was a great dancer. And on the way into the djembe drum class, he was coming out of the dance class, and our eyes met, and we both smiled at each other. About a week later, I get a message on my machine from him it turns out that he knew somebody that was a very good friend of mine in Los Angeles, and he had been to visit that person, and somehow it came up that I was interested in the djembe drum. So there's a message on my machine. This is Siddiqui. I'm George's friend. And I'm like, this is that guy that I saw at the dance studio. That was the beginning of our relationship. And I began to take private drum lessons with Siddiqui. So in the course of taking these lessons, it came out that I play the guitar. And so he said, bring your guitar. And so he would sing to me something he wanted me to play on the guitar. And then I would find it on the guitar. And so he had this band, and he invited me to come and be in the band. So I was one of the singers. It was me and 4 women from West Africa. And I learned my parts phonetically. He would say the line to me and sing it, and I would write it out phonetically. I had no idea what I was singing about, but it was a real interesting, thing to learn these parts. So I came to the first rehearsal with my piece of paper and this phonetic, writing out of the words. And the first time I sang in this section, the other 4 women fell on the floor laughing. Because I think, just the sight of me reading through this stuff and interpreting the way I thought it was supposed to sound, that was the beginning of playing music with Siddiqui. And so I was in his band for about 5 shows that they did in various places around New York. And when it was over with, I called him up and I said, why don't we get together and just write songs in both your language and in English, and just see what we come up with, see if that's possible,
That's great.
And that was the beginning of AfroJersey.
And that's just exactly what I was going to say. So what a wonderful story about how AfroJersey was born. I've seen some of the videos on YouTube. They're fantastic.
I feel like Siddiqui and I were musical soulmates in the sense that we're from such different worlds.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, there was another gentleman named Marlon who joined the group. Tell us a little bit about the musical process that the 3 of you went through to put together the music that you did. And then, with the time we have, let us know, how does one see AfroJersey, either on YouTube or elsewhere?
Yeah, on YouTube, you can just type in AfroJersey. The video about us that shows us playing live is on there. That's a good place to start. You can get copies of the CD on my website, terreroche.com. And Marlon, I must say about Marlon, the group started with Siddiqui and I getting together, and it would really be, we would discuss, like, what do you want to write about? And the subject matters. And then some of the songs, he already had a half a song, or I had a half a song, or a whole song. And then the job was, okay, you've got this whole song. Now we've got to put the other language into a verse. And Marlon was a friend of ours who came to all our shows. He was practically the only person in the audience. Nobody else came to see this, but Marlon did. And Siddiqui said at one point, Marlon, why don't you join the band? We need a bass player? So Marlon jumped in and started to be in the band as well. And eventually there was a fourth person, Paul Brantley, who's a very talented classical cellist. And he joined the band eventually as well. But that was after we had made the record. It was Marlon's idea to make the record because he said, this is really interesting. This should be documented.
So the record is available online at terryroche.com. That's great. So, how did you bring those cultures together? If I'm not mistaken, you were raised Irish Catholic in New Jersey, and Siddiqui was raised in West Africa. So you brought these two amazing cultures together. What was that like, and what was the process like?
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't jump right into like the cultural differences and stuff, but this was all coming together shortly after 9/11 and the World Trade Center. And so at that point, I never really talked about being Irish Catholic from New Jersey, and Siddiqui didn't talk about being Muslim from West Africa. But all of a sudden, the whole religion discussion was on the table. And we were very, I think, skillful about treating each other, with compassion, even though we didn't understand necessarily the other person's beliefs. Siddiqui is a very devout Muslim and practicing, goes to the mosque regularly. I'm more of a lapsed Catholic, but we didn't jump in with like, let's write about our cultures, those things came out in the songs. I have a song called Nobody's Doing the Job, about how nobody likes the job they're doing. And Siddiqui really liked that song. So we put a verse in there in Mandingo, which is his language.
Right.
And then he had a song about farmers and how important farmers are because they feed the people. And that song is called Senero. That involved a discussion, like, let's talk about what is this saying in Mandingo. So it was fun. There were lots of laughs. We had a sense of humor about what we were doing. And there was no pressure. Nobody was telling us to do this.
Sure. Maybe one advantage to not releasing AfroJersey on a major label was the flexibility it gave you to do what you did. And it's also wonderful to hear that the cultural exchange just evolved organically. It seems to me that in today's day and age, we're really lacking that cultural exchange. And when it happens, it's really a good thing. We're taking a quick break. When we come back to Public Health America, Terry Roche will tell us a little bit more about AfroJersey, how to hear the music, and the journey that they undertook. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We're here today with Terre Roche. It's been so great to get to know the AfroJersey project, the amazing quartet that you put together with Siddiqui and Marlon and Paul. Tell us a little bit more about the music you did, the process that you went through to compose the music, and the performances that you gave.
You know, as I say, this band started right after 9/11,
Oh, right.
and the CD was made, I'm not sure, but maybe 10 years ago. So we're not doing the band, you know, at this point. We did do a bunch of performances. And the thing about this band that to me, I loved was that it did not come from a calculated idea of, hey, let's bring these two cultures together. It came out of my drum lessons with Siddiqui. And when I brought the guitar, we discovered that we had this chemistry of playing together. And I would never have thought that. The rhythms from his music, they were difficult for me. I had to really work at learning how to play them on the drum. And then with the guitar stuff for the songs of his, it was challenging, which I always love that, you know, and I love the combination of it's challenging music. We're really communicating with each other, and there's no pressure from business people. There's no like, well, this has to be delivered to Warner Brothers. You know, it was really a joyful experience. And when Marlon suggested that we make the record, I wasn't even thinking about making a record. But then, you know, these days you can do Kickstarter and you can kind of raise some money for something like that. And so we went that route. And I'm so glad that we did, because the record, here's a copy of the record.
Nice.
And you see the cover, you see where it says like Park Ridge, New Jersey. That's right. The town I grew up in, and Conakry, yep. Guinea. And it's all happening in the subway.
That's great.
And our friend Chris Pelletier did this collage of the thing. And then and then here's us. Here's us on stage.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So I see and it has 10 tracks.
Yeah. It has 10 tracks. Yep.
And were each of the tracks like collaborative, or were there some that it was more from Siddiqui and some that were more from you, or how did that collaboration work?
Both of those things happen. Sometimes there'd be a whole song, like in the case of my song, Doing the Job, and I had the whole song, but then we had to put in a verse of Mandingo, because the one rule was that you had to sing in both. Everyone, all three of us, had to sing in both languages. Siddiqui's song, Senero, he came in with that song. Tawiya is one of his. There's a song on here called Captain Sully about the plane landing in the Hudson
Sure.
River, which Marlon actually saw the plane when that happened. And Remember the Elephant is a song that we wrote about the problem of poaching in, and actually, I think someone actually asked us, would we write a song about that? The songs are really interesting because they weren't calculated what we're going to write about. They grew like the way a plant would grow. And
Sure.
So at times people would ask me, what language are you singing in on this song? And I'd say English, because I started to phrase the way Siddiqui was phrasing. And God knows what I sounded like in terms of speaking Mandingo well, you know.
Sure. No, that's great. And, to what extent, in our second segment, we're going to talk about some re-release of some older work that you did with your sister Maggie, and potentially a new project that you're working on for 2022. Is there an element of this great experience with AfroJersey that helped to influence some of your work that came after, or is it kind of a distinct kind of moment in time that we can enjoy by virtue of the CD that remains?
Well, there's, everything that you do affects everything else, I think. Every time you work on a project, and I've done really a lot of different, diverse kind of projects. There's a project called Us and Them. Us, A-N apostrophe T-H-E-M. And that's with Gary Dial, jazz pianist Gary Dial, and me collaborating on national anthems from 16 different countries. And each one has somebody from that country living in New York City. So it's a project, and Siddiqui is on that record as well. We were doing them at the same time. So I would say all of that has affected when you go to write something, now you realize, I was communicating in this other language that I didn't even know what I was saying. And that frees you up, and you realize it doesn't really matter the meaning in the words so much as the sound of the words.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'll share this. It was years. I hope I'm going to get the quote wrong, but you can go south in winter, be what you are, a goose. It was a decade before I recognized a goose, and then I laughed because I got the line. But the reason it took me a decade is not only because I'm slow, but I make up for it by being short. It took 10 years because I loved the song so much. I was just focusing on the melody and the harmony. So I think that's an excellent point. It's a kind of testimony to just, again, what the arts can do, bringing people together from the same culture, from different cultures, to clearly in your narrative is a kind of joyfulness of that exploration, and not necessarily knowing, and this is not easy, caring about the outcome, but rather about the journey. And then by making that journey, learning things that you didn't expect. Terry, we've got about a minute left. If there's a final thought you want to leave us with respect to AfroJersey, or just a message you want to send to the Bronx, please let us know.
Okay, I would just like to say hi to everybody listening up there in the Bronx and everywhere, wherever you are. And also just really encourage people to be adventurous with music. A lot of people feel like, oh, I have to go to school about music. But then you look at the bird, you listen to the birds, and you think, they're singing all the time. So I really feel, especially as I get older, I feel like it's really a good message to let people know that, try things, don't worry about falling on your face with music. It's going to be an interesting ride, and you're going to meet interesting people if you play music. They don't call it work music, they call it play music. So that's my message.
That's wonderful. I want to thank Terre Roche for joining us today on Public Health America. I want to thank our guests for tuning in. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. See you next time on Public Health America. Take care.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.